What's up, guys? This is Anderson.
What's up, guys? Christian here.
And on this episode, we are going to delve into something we all have.
Oh, yeah.
And that is memories.
Memories.
But some of us don't have memories. It's unfortunate.
That can't be. What do you mean? Unless you're like an infant.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. No, so we're also going to talk a little bit about something called the Mandela Effect. So, if you're watching or listening, get ready. Turn on, tune out, drop in, because we're about to ride the wave of weird as we enter 111. What's good?
What I mean?
So, we've decided to slow down a little bit on the podcasting because life. we've decided to kind of close out after so many episodes.
Yeah.
And we're gonna probably plan to start again soon. Not anytime soon. I mean, we still have a good amount left to go.
Yeah, for sure. We're not nearing the end just yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah, but it's been a crazy endeavor. We've talked about some pretty neat things.
Oh, definitely.
Interesting. I think we need to do more ghost episodes, though.
I think those are my favorite.
Yeah.
They're the fun ones.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, they're all fun for sure, but something about telling ghost stories just...
It's like campfire tales. But, yeah, this episode, like I said, is going to be about the idea of memories and, are they even real? Of course they're real. Your brain makes it up. It stores it, It's like a computer. Your brain is like a computer, and the things that you remember basically get encoded and stored, and you have those memories. But why do we not remember a lot of things?
I think because it gets a little fuzzy. Because I know I've had instances where I'm like, did that happen? Or did I imagine that happening? And then somehow it's turned into like a memory, like a stored memory. I mean, I don't know if you've had those moments.
Honestly, the way that I have been thinking about memories, and because everybody always tells me, like, man, you got a really good memory.
Oh my God, yeah, definitely.
Like,
especially compared to mine. Mine.
They always tell me, like, how do you remember it so vividly and so detailed? Anderson
could tell a story, and it blows my mind. He could be like, yeah, you remember that time that we were on that trip, and, we went to this restaurant named Joe's Burgers from California, and I'm like, oh, what? No, I don't remember that. You were wearing a red shirt. And
you remember you ordered that chili cheeseburger?
Like,
you're
no, I don't remember.
The meat is too cooked.
Your memory is pristine.
But the crazy part about it is, like, I always ask myself, like, but why is my memory sharp for certain things as opposed to, like, things that I need to, like, have on deck? Like when I was in school, when I was studying, like, I could never remember a lot of the things, that I would have to research and memorize. But to be fair, my memorization was pretty spot on because...
were they things that interested you, though? Because I have a theory on that.
No, things that I didn't find interesting, I could still remember, but it was always because growing up, my mom, she'd always reward me for, like, getting A's on spelling tests. How you'd have to remember, like, spelling words and things like that. So I think that played a huge factor in, like, my ability to, like, retain certain information. But after I learned it, because they say you store it, right? So how come after I store it, when I need to go back to it, it's nowhere to be found?
And it's not a theory, but I heard a very interesting thought on that. I was at work a while back, and I was talking to a coworker, and his daughter was going through, like, prep SAT classes online, and he gave me, like, a little pop quiz. He was like, hey, check out these questions that she's being asked. And when I tell you, I felt so stupid, like, trying to remember geometry and algebra. And I was like, oh God, no. I did horrible, by the way. And he was like, how can you not remember what the square root of da 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 da? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, you know why? Because when you're learning something, you're not actually learning it. You're trying to memorize it. And I was like, that's actually a great way to look at it, because I remember being in school and you just wanted to like memorize it really quickly to like pass the test or the quiz that could be coming up next week, but you weren't actually diving into it and learning it and retaining the information. And that's why, I mean, if I had to guess, it's because it's something that he was really into. I think he said he majored in accounting. And so his math skills were just like really, really good. And I was like, well, it could have also been because you had such a high interest in that, whereas like, I don't really care about math. You know what I mean? That's why I'm like wondering, I think when you're more into a subject, you want to learn it, you want to memorize it, or not memorize, but you want to like retain all that, you know?
Yeah, that's actually that's actually true, because I can remember like directors' names. Like I can remember what films they made in what order. Not all the time, but I'd say like 10 years ago, man, I was really sharp with memorizing. Like, oh yeah, David Fincher did this, 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 and this before he did that. You know.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like I kind of stopped. I used to be on IMDb all the time, like memorizing.
That's
like
me right now.
Oh man, he's got a movie coming out this time, and you know, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I feel like in school, whenever you had to like study, especially subjects you didn't care about, like I don't even know if I can pass a basic math test now because I just don't use it, you know, like it's really crazy to me to think like, could I get through college or high school anymore, you know? Because like when you leave like, you know, education, and you're fixed on like what you do for your job, your day-to-day life, you know, everything else goes out the door. So it makes sense that you don't remember some of those things, you know, because it just becomes like excess almost, you know, in your headspace. And your headspace is probably like, nah, we don't need it. We don't use it. Let's store it. But how come you just can't access things that you absolutely need, you know? Like that's the thing to me. I remember the story in 8th grade. My 8th grade teacher was telling us about her husband, how he had a photographic memory.
Okay.
And I was like, what's that? She's like, well, a photographic memory is like somebody just has the ability to like literally capture everything visually and remember it and never lose sight of it. Like they will always remember that.
They make for good detectives.
Yeah. So she was like, yeah, he would go to New York, and like years had passed and he could still remember everything to a T. You know?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like when, you know, it makes sense like if you were growing up somewhere and you like, oh no, I grew up here, you know, like it makes sense to like know something about it, or like even if you haven't been there in like 10, 20 years. Yeah. So this last trip I went to California back in December, I remember I went to my childhood home and I could still figure out how to get there.
Okay.
You know, but my teacher was saying like her husband went on a trip for like a week to New York and memorized a lot of his travels. So then when he went with her, she was like, how do you know all this? And he's like, oh, I went here like a week ago and I remember everything, because he has like very sharp memory, photographic memory. So. Yeah. I wish I had one of those.
They're useful, definitely. Like you said, when you're traveling, I've had friends that will be like, oh, yeah, you just take a left here or right there, go straight, second block down. I'm like, oh, I could never, like, Google Maps is, you know.
And it's funny because, like, think about this. 20 years ago, you memorized your address, you memorized phone numbers.
Phone numbers. I remember being, like, a preteen teenager. And a handful of people, you know, you memorize their phone numbers now. I say it all the time because it's so funny that like cell phones memorize everything for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's at least, I want to say, no, actually just one phone number that I have memorized now, because people have changed their phone numbers like since, you know, however long. But
I know.
And I always say that if you were in jail, if you got arrested, who are you going to call? You know, like, do you have at least one phone number
I'll
memorized?
call my old home phone number that isn't even connected anymore.
Like, who are you going to call? You get that one phone call, you know, you can't bust out your cell phone.
I'll call the donut shop and be like, Mom.
But like, is like the operator going to connect you to that? Or is it like the same phone number that they've had since?
It's the same phone number.
Okay, that's cool.
So like,
Yeah.
I could remember like my cousin's home phone number because it was similar to ours. It'd be like, oh yeah, it's 298-3641. See, do you remember? I still remember my childhood home where my Uncle David and I grew up. It was 2266796. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I remember that.
Hand clap for you, sir.
That's crazy. Like, I have not dialed those numbers in like 25 years.
Yeah. That's impressive.
That's crazy.
Good memory.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've always, you know, and the thing is, like, think of it like this. Whenever you go to sleep, whenever you wake, you're always thinking, right? And it's always like memories or like,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes you're like, oh, what do I got to do today?
Mm-hmm.
So you're thinking like about your present moment.
Yeah.
But a lot of the things, you know, like when you're ending your evening, it always goes back to like remembering something,
Yeah.
right? If you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
like I'll always be like, the crazy part is like with anything, like you could hear a song and that song just triggers like, oh man, I remember like being, you know.
They say music is like one of the best memory triggers, honestly. Music and scents.
And scents, yeah, like smell, right?
Yeah, that's your strongest.
They said that's the strongest, and I always find that weird because I'm like, I mean, I just, there's not enough, you know, smell that would make me be like, oh, I remember that moment that I had that cheese pizza, you know, like, but like I could hear a song,
Yeah.
and right away, it'll trigger like a memory, like a past memory, like for instance, like if like we went to a concert, the Third Eye Blind concert, you know, and it was like they played a song that like I just adored, right?
Yeah.
Since I was like 14, 15, 16 years old. And they played it, and when it played, it was just like it triggered so many emotions and just so many like memories of like when I was a teenager, listening to it in my room, you know, like CD player. And it's, to me, it's like, it's such a crazy thing to think about that you have the ability to access like some of these memories and, you know, and it's like, yeah, your brain is a computer. It's essentially like the strongest computer out there, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever I film stuff, and you know, I always document like everything. I'm always carrying a camera.
For sure.
When I'm done, I'll put all that footage onto like hard drives. Mm-hmm. You know, like that's just how I store everything.
Yeah,
right?
you have to.
Whenever we review that footage, especially like the day-to-day, like the mundane vlogs.
The liveless things.
Isn't it bizarre how much we've forgotten?
Mm-hmm.
And then when we watch it, it's like, it feels like you remember it and you're there. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, no, I remember. And I remember after that we went to do this. But it wasn't until we looked at the footage that it was like, oh, yeah.
I remember that car ride to the restaurant that we went to for lunch that day.
Yeah.
And yeah, for sure. Because they're just like the smallest details, you know? Like it's nothing, it's not like it's a birthday. It's not like it's an event, you know? It's just your day-to-day. And you just quickly store it and then delete it.
Yeah. It's, but I guess my point is like, isn't it funny that I'm storing memories onto a hard drive? Mm-hmm. So it's like, where do we store those memories? Yeah. You know, are we like, do we have like these hard drive spaces in our head, you know, that just like in our brains that just like stores everything? Or are we even like, or are we like avatars, you know, like we're in a simulation and like when we go to sleep, we actually unplug and the computer system, like I always refer to this from the episode of Black Mirror. It's called San Junipero. Yeah. It's the end of it where, you know, the characters are uploading their consciousness onto hard drives. So they're able to go anywhere because they're just basically reliving in these memories. Yeah. So the end of the episode, sorry, spoiler if you haven't seen it, but it's a robot that's like taking out these hard drives and then running it through and like plugging it into other areas, you know? So I always think of like inside my brain, is that what is happening? Or is like, are we actually unplugging and our memories are just stored away? And then the next day you have a whole new set of memories that you know, you might think about, or, you know, because if I were to ask you right now, do you remember every single birthday that you've ever had? Think of it like that, because your birthday is a very momentous day. Like you always, not always, but you celebrate it, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember every single birthday leading up to your age?
Of course not. No way.
Right? But you do remember a handful of them that are like momentous, or like something that was so out of pocket that you're like, oh yeah, I remember my 30th because I did this and I did this. Yeah. You know, so like for me, I'll always remember like my 5th birthday, like from 4 years old to 5 years old. And the only reason why is because it was a momentous one. Like my parents went all out, and I still remember going to a grocery store and picking out my cake. And I pointed out to a Bruce Lee cake. That was the cake I wanted. And so that's what I got. And it just always stayed in my headspace. Also because it helps when you have pictures, you know? Like,
yeah, that's true.
You always see those, and then...
But what's funny is, like, my memory works a little bit differently in the sense that you're right. I can't tell you, you know, what my 4th, 5th, 6th birthdays, you know, were like. But the memories that I hold on to, and I still think about them today, and like it really warms my heart, are just like regular days that I had like as a child, like hanging out with my mom, like hanging out with family. And I can tell you exactly what happened, you know, for like a brief moment, not the whole day, but like a brief moment. So like some of my favorite memories, like one of them, like I love Halloween. And I think I love Halloween so much because growing up as a child, hanging out with my mom, my sister, my cousins, my aunt, it was something that we looked forward to. And I remember this one, I want to say I must have been like 5 or 6. And we were heading into Galveston for some reason. I have family in Lake Jackson. It could have been maybe to go visit someone. But we were heading into Galveston, and I remember we had just picked up McDonald's. And I was in the car with my cousin, who's 2 years younger than me. And he was, you know, next to me. And I had my little Happy Meal. And at the time, it was when they were releasing, like, the plastic, like, pumpkin ones and stuff. Yeah. And I was so content with like that moment that I had my little Happy Meal. I had, what was it? The purple figurine, you know, and like their little like Halloween costumes. And it was just a regular moment. Like I was so happy in that moment. My mom was driving, my aunt was in the front seat, and we're just heading in. And it was like the excitement of like Halloween was around the corner. And you know, what were we going to do for Halloween? Like, you know, looking for a costume and stuff like that. Just like those little moments that you hang on to. One of my other favorite memories is, being a kid and, going to NASA with my mom, and then coming back home and just being so amazed at like the idea of outer space and possibly, you know, maybe traveling to space one day. And I just remember hanging out in the front yard. It was a beautiful day, really sunny, breezy, and just like thinking about all these possibilities. And I still think about that memory all the time. It's just like those. It's like
a happy place, right?
Yeah, it's a happy place.
Yeah, so I feel like because I can remember so many details about like some of the past experiences, I'm like I'm overwhelmed with like gratitude. I had a memory, I'd say like 2 years ago, maybe. I think it was during the lockdown. I think I got like really deep into like a meditation. I was in like an alpha state, and I was just kind of relaxed, and I was laying in bed, and I just had this like memory jog back. It was like, if you can imagine like the robot arm going like digging through like you know, looking for like this specific memory.
Yeah.
But it was a memory that I think I just kind of like forgot, you know. But it was a warming memory And it was basically when my grandfather took myself and my uncle David. I was probably like 6 years old, and David was like 9. And my grandpa took us to the school carnival, you know, and I feel like he just dropped us off and let us like go and play. But I don't recall my grandpa being there. It's like he just let us go do our thing, and then he came back to pick us up. And I just totally forgot about that memory. And I was like, and the crazy part is, it was so detailed. I remember we got our faces painted. I remember David got cotton candy, and it was the first time I had cotton candy. And I was just like, you know, I was like, man, I was so happy. Like, it was like a very good memory. And I remember when I woke from it, I texted David, and I was like, do you remember when we went to the school carnival when we were like really little, and grandpa just like dropped us off? He didn't remember.
Oh, wow.
You know, like it was so far back and so like buried, he didn't remember it. I mean, for me too, I not until I got so deep into that trance, that meditative state, that I was like, it was just like, it started with visuals, you know. It's always visuals too. Like I don't have memories that come back from like a sound, unless it's music, right? But it's not like you can hear a certain sound again. Like your mom's like calling you, maybe it might trigger you to be like, oh, my mom, like I remember when she used to yell at me like that, you know. But it's not like a specific thing that's like said that triggers like a memory. It's always a visual thing. It's always a visual element and I think that's why I'm so captivated by like recording everything. Even as a child, I used to record like TV commercials because I thought it was the coolest thing to go back 5 or 10 years later to watch them and be like, whoa, I remember that. I remember those toy commercials growing up.
You know, but I bet you now, if you still, I don't know if you still have that footage.
No, unfortunately.
But if you did, that would be a great reference to compare some of these Mandela Effect theories. Because let me tell you.
Mandela or Mandala?
Mandela.
Like Nelson Mandela?
Like Nelson Mandela.
All right. Go ahead and cue us up. What is Mandela Effect?
So, the Mandela Effect originated...
Man, this just took a really crazy turn. We went from memories to maybe memories.
But it's all tied. That's what's so funny, because I wanted to ask you, like, where's the line between false memories and actual memories? I know we talked about that at the beginning of the episode, but it's true, because why is it that a collective, a group of people can have the same memory, and according to some, it's a false memory?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, how does that even happen? So to our listeners who don't know what the Mandela Effect is, the Mandela Effect is when many people believe that something happened when in reality it never did. These groups are adamant that they can remember an incident or specific experience even when it is when it is incorrect. And the name refers to a mass false memory involving numerous people admitting to remembering Nelson Mandela dying in prison during the 1980s. When in fact, he actually died at his home in 2013. Do you remember him dying in prison?
I thought I remembered him dying in prison because that's why, like, there was a huge revolt in Africa during that time, because they were like, it was like...
he went on a hunger strike, right?
I felt like it was, like, the reason that he... had there was a revolution is because people were trying to get him out. Like,
I'm thinking of Gandhi, sorry.
They were feeling like he was in prison for the wrong reason. Okay. And he was like beat up and all of that, you know. Yeah. And he stood for the whole stick it to the man kind of thing, you know. He was like their martyr almost. So that's how I always kind of but I don't know if I just like have a passerby memory of it, you know. And
but you would be one of the high percentage of people that actually have false memories. So in this article, it states that...
Wait, so are you saying that I don't really have sharp memory and it's probably really just made up?
I mean, according to according to research, a 2020 memory study in the journal Psychological Science found that when asked to recall information, 76% of adults made at least one detectable error. Although the memory accuracy of the study's participants was generally very high, with around 93 to 95% of all verifiable details being correct, the research highlights that a person's memory is not infallible. Things that never happened or events that have become muddled over time can, in one's head, become real, and knowledge can become distorted or confused. You know? And I mean, like, look at the example I just gave you. Like, I was like, oh, wasn't there a hunger strike? And I was like, no, wait, that was Gandhi. You know, like, you can, like, mix up details, you know? But why is it that there's so many popular Mandela Effect theories that multiple people...
I know. I think that's probably the interesting part, or the oddity, the uncanny of it, is that it's not just you or I. It's like a lot of people, like a collective of people that are like, no, I swear. Like, I remember, like, you know, for me, the kicker for me was when I saw the Berenstein.
Was that the first Mandela Effect?
That's
you
the
were
first one.
introduced to?
Yeah, and I forget where I was, but I was like, wait, what are people? This is trippy. I was like, why are people thinking this? It was never Stain. It was always Steen.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, I had books. I remember it. I remember drawing the cover of one of the books.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, like, writing it out. But was I really writing the right one? You know, like, that's the part that makes it, you start to question your own, like, you know, your own memory. You're like, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so.
There's so many of them.
Let's go through the list of examples.
So some of the examples. How do you remember Kit Kat's logo?
I remember it said Kit-Kat.
Yeah. Apparently there was no dash.
Really?
Yeah, no dash. It was always just Kit Kat.
That's
side by side.
That's weird because, okay, the weird part about that is I made these short films and we called my brother Kit Kat Kid. Mm-hmm. Like, that was his character name.
Okay.
Pretty sure there was a dash because of the candy.
Oh, wow. Did you put dashes in between all the K's, like Kit and then Cat and then Kid?
Not Kid, just Kit Kat.
Oh, okay.
But that's what I'm saying.
Do you have that project still?
I still have that project. I need to go look for it.
You should look at it and see if you put a dash.
If I didn't put a dash, does that mean that my memory is wrong? Or is it because when the Mandela Effect happened, that dash got erased?
Oh, that's the crazy part, right? Like, is all evidence gone? Because the same thing happens with, like, you know, people swear up and down that, like, and I can kind of believe this, especially with, like, Disney Plus now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you remember, I remember reading an article a couple years ago about, I think it was Pocahontas, and, you know, it was like when culture appropriation was, like, kind of a big topic at the time, and they were upset about, I think there were, like, a number of movies, like Dumbo, like a lot of the old school movies, and they mentioned in the article that they were going to make some changes on the movies on Disney Plus moving forward to stray away from, you know.
Okay, so, like, kind of re-edit them or
yeah,
something.
exactly.
Okay.
So people swear up and down now that they remember certain Disney movies having certain scenes, certain drawings, and, you know, a lot of people still have VHS tapes. I still have a bunch of VHS tapes.
Right.
You know, not with me at my mom's, but, you know, it kind of goes to show, like, if we go back and replay those VHS tapes, are they going to have what you originally felt was there, or were they erased because in 2012, you know, like...
What is the theory on, like, how it happened? Is it because of the Mayan calendar, the end of the world 2012 thing?
That's kind of what I heard. You might be able to explain it better than I could, but I heard that the shift happened in 2012. I've heard theories on it happening with CERN.
I heard it happened in either 2014 or 2016, to be honest. I think it was when, CERN was using the Hadron Collider, and they were smashing the particles to try to, like, open up a black hole, but then instead they were, like, shifting our reality, you know? I just remember, like, a lot of weird stuff was happening in, like, 2016, and I was like, man, it's almost far-fetched, you know? It's almost like our reality got mixed in with another reality that was a far-fetched reality that was so hyper-extreme that all of a sudden, like, both worlds collided and we're, like, split now. Because, I mean, you remember my dream that I had that I told you? That's where that whole term, living through the ween, comes from.
Yeah.
Because the ween is actually representing the in-between. Because we're, like, in between both of those, like, our reality and then a hyper reality. And that's why, like, all of these things that were like, oh my gosh, you know, we had a lot of conversations about that. Remember, like, I don't even know if we want to mention them, but it's like, I feel like something happened after that whole CERN, you know?
But my question, I've asked you this before, is what is the purpose of, you know, that small shift happening and changing little things like text?
Well, I don't think there was that they did that to change little text around. I just think that was the aftermath, like and then they didn't realize it until, like, people started noticing it, and then they're like, oh shoot, like we did that. Yeah, like that was us. Whoops, you know. Like I feel like that is kind of what actually happened, and then they're like, well, can't go back, like, you know, we've what's done is done. We shifted the reality. So I feel like that's why there's, like, a huge mishmash of, like, people remembering one thing and other people going, nah, it was like this, you know. Like, we even had it here, like, when we were looking up, you know, some of the different effects. I mean, like, do you remember Kit Kat having a dash?
That one I can't say.
Do you remember Chick-fil-A being spelled?
That's one of the ones I do remember, because I still to this day will sometimes type in Chick, C-H-I-C, Phil A, but apparently there's always been a K in there, which makes sense. Yeah. Because it's chicken, but for some reason,
oh my God, wait, no.
You scared the shit out of me, Anderson. Oh my God.
It was never with a K. It was always chic.
That's what I thought.
Because I would always get spell corrected on the phone.
Yes.
And I was like, no.
Yes.
It's not with a K. It's always C-H-I-C.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. To this day, I will still type in C-H-I-C.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
that's wild.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Some of those things really do blow my mind. Another one that I think, I don't know if I asked you this a while back, but do you remember Ed McMahon?
Oh, yes.
And the Publishing Clearinghouse? That one blew my mind, because I definitely remember Ed McMahon. I remember seeing that segment as a kid. Ed McMahon showing up at your door with that giant ass check, you know, you won $1 million, you know, with his microphone and the camera crew and, you know, person, housewife, whoever opens the door, and oh my God. And da-da-da. Apparently it was never Ed McMahon. He never did that. It was a different, it was just like a camera crew, and like the van would pull up, and he was never part of that. Apparently he had something similar, but he was never going to people's homes. He had like some kind of a segment on TV where he was in like on a set, like on a controlled set, where he would give away money, and I think you would get something in the mail from him, but it was never with Publishing Clearinghouse, and I definitely remember that. But
yeah, that's what I remember as well. It's so bizarre.
Because you see stuff like that in, like, that's what blows my mind. You see it in skits, you see it in movies, you see it. That's
the part that is just like, I shake my head. Like The Risky Business with Tom Cruise, wearing shades, the dress shirt, and then no pants and socks, and he slides in. But the glasses, you know, there's still skits with that same thing happening.
Yeah.
So it's like,
why are there so many reenactments.
Did they just like decide to do it themselves, and that's what we remember?
But then if they were to erase, like you say, we go with the theory that we just talked about. If they were to erase, that thing from, multiple, segments or whatever, like, why wouldn't they erase it from reenactments or skits?
I know that part is kind of mind bending, like to think like, if we did away with it with one, like the actual source, why didn't not like do away with it everywhere else?
Correct.
Kind of like the Britney Spears where she has the headset on.
Yeah. Or the one that we just saw with Richard Simmons, where people remember him in his workout gear with his sweatband. Apparently, he never had a sweatband on.
I know. Or then,
I definitely remember him having a sweatband on.
Like Looney Tunes, I always remembered the TOONS because it's like cartoons, Looney Tunes, but no, it's spelled like music, like TUNES.
Which doesn't really make much sense.
Because they didn't play music on the show.
Exactly.
Like it wasn't like, oh, here comes Looney Tunes. It's like a musical, No, it was never like that. I mean, we have a slew of different examples.
The one that really blew my mind was the C-3PO.
That one, Star Wars has a couple of them, because that was one. You want to explain it?
Yeah, we just found that C-3PO, I remember him being completely in gold.
Yeah.
Apparently, he had a silver leg.
A silver leg?
When the hell did he ever have a silver leg? I mean, we'll have to, if you're a Star Wars fan, let us know. You've always been a Star Wars fan. If you can just strongly say he's always had a silver leg, then, but I never remember him with a silver leg.
Like, it was never, like, talked about on the movie. Like, there's no reference to it. It just, the other one from Star Wars is where I always remembered Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, that's totally not what he says. And then even they did an interview, I think, with, what's his name? Earl Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, he was the voice. So he was like, he even said it on an interview, just like that.
Yeah.
So it's, Luke, I am your father. And I think the Mandela version is like, I forget now. We'd have to look it up.
Oh, let me
but
look
it was like,
because I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's like, Luke, I am your father. And then he says like, Luke, I am father? No. But yeah, that was like that one was also a mind bender when I heard it back then.
Apparently he doesn't say, Luke, I am your father. It says, no, I am your father.
Why would he say that?
Everybody I've ever heard reenact that line always has Luke's name in it.
Yeah.
Everybody. In movies, and in movies it's the worst because they are always hitting that line.
Yeah.
For parodies.
Yeah. It's just like Scary Movie, remember? Where it's a parody movie. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Scary Movie, where they just make fun of a bunch of like slasher films and of the time, right? And of the time, The Sixth Sense was a big hit that they were making a parody out of. And there's a scene where, in the actual Sixth Sense, Haley Joel Osment goes, "I see dead people." Right? So then this Scary Movie version, it's with the Wayans brothers, right? And
what do they say? I see.
There's I remember it as, "I see white people."
Yeah.
But no, he literally, they say like he just repeated that same line. And I was like,
no. I was just about to say, he says, "I see white people." Are they saying that he didn't say that?
No, they're saying that he says like, "I see dead people" as well.
No.
We just had this conversation.
When?
Like 3 weeks to 4 weeks ago.
Did we?
Yes.
This isn't making me a credible source because I have a bad memory, period. But there are certain things that just stand out. You know what I mean? Definitely stand out.
That one was because then I was like, what was the point of even parodying that film if you're gonna use that? Because I remember the joke. I remember everybody in the theater was like, "Dude, that was funny."
Yeah.
Because Marlon Wayans, he's black. What was the other brother's name? I forget. They used to always do those movies with. Well, that was the whole kicker. Is like they would always do a play on like white people because they were black, you know? And yeah, I remember specifically, like, he was like, I see white people.
That's what I remember too. How is that even?
I mean, unless things got edited, but I don't know. I don't feel like we're the only
cultural
one.
appropriation.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
The Monopoly Mandela Effect. Do you remember him?
I always felt like he had a monocle.
I remember him with a monocle too.
So when people are saying like, yeah, he doesn't have a monocle, I just was like, maybe they're editing the game. Maybe these companies are just like changing it, and you know, like years go by before anybody notices, you know, and they're like, oh wait, because I also asked you when we looked at that, I was like, maybe people are getting the Monopoly Man mixed up with the Planters peanut.
The Peanut Man.
Because he carries a little walking stick, right?
Top hat,
and then he has the little monocle.
Yeah.
So maybe people are getting mixed up with that, but I don't think so. I don't think so, because I remember Monopoly Man having that monocle.
Pikachu and his tail.
So they're saying that Pikachu from Pokemon never had a black on his tail. I always remembered him.
I definitely remember it because I felt like they were such like the color scheme would just stand out, and like the black on the yellow. Yeah. And I remember going all the way down the tail, but I didn't really watch Pokemon like that, so I can't like.
Yeah, same here. But I just feel like I remember. So that's the other thing, is maybe it's just because we could show somebody something from the past and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that, but then they don't fully remember it. Maybe maybe it's just like a false memory that we had. Like we thought that he had that because we saw somebody else's interpretation of it. So maybe we're like, no, yeah, I remember that, but then we can't really say, right? Unless we're like completely like obsessed with it and like we're like, no, I know he had a black on his tail.
The only one I'm really obsessed with is the Chick-fil-A one, because I'm telling you, I don't remember a K in Chick-fil-A, man. I really don't.
Yeah, that just hit me. I do remember always typing in like CHIC, like the actual name, and then Phil, and then dash, and then A, but then it would always autocorrect to Chick, and I'm like, oh man, this is not how you spell it.
Yeah,
that is weird.
That's the only one. I'll fight you on it if you tell me.
I literally had like that moment of epiphany where I was like, wait, I remember typing in CHIC and it would autocorrect. Weird.
So weird.
Man, so many waves of weird. But anyways, going back to regular memories, short-term memories. I have a bad short-term memory.
Do you?
Yeah, sometimes like I feel like I just don't remember. I don't know. I feel like sometimes I'm scatterbrained, you know, but I can remember things like long term. Like I feel like I have a really good long term.
Oh,
memory.
You have that down pat.
Yeah. So
my memory is like it's all over the place because I can't remember, you know, certain things like. You just said that we had a conversation on, you know, the I see white people versus I see dead people, and I definitely don't remember that, but I really don't. But like if I'm having an argument with somebody, I can like I'll give you receipts. You know what I mean? I'll be like, no, and it happens to me all the time. Like you said this at this time, and I remember you saying that because then I came back at you with this, and like just, I can remember the whole conversation. I don't know. That's
again, it's another thing where it's like. You remember when you were hurt or when you hurt someone or how you felt when, you know, you experienced something for the first time. Like a lot of those memories, I feel like they kind of stand out a lot more, you know, rather than the mundane. And that's why, like, when I film stuff, I try to film the mundane things because I feel like those are like the little potholes in our memory that we don't get to like remember, you know? So that's why I'm always filming like random work trips or like, you know, if I go to the gym, I used to always film stuff like that, and it's just because I know like I won't remember it. It's not captivating enough to be like, oh man.
No, but they're always cool to watch because it's always like watching like a day in the life.
Yeah, it just feels authentic and like, you know, it's not having to be like a birthday or.
And then, you know, just like the little jokes that, you know, you'll catch on screen, just like, and they're just they're so minor, you know.
I know. And it's crazy because, you know, that word nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's nostalgia is king. Like, time and time again, like, we go back to things that we remember being, you know, things that bring us back to like a happy place, or, you know, like when I see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I'm always like, oh man, that was a happy time, you know, like those were the good old days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like, I feel like sometimes we take it for granted. Like, you know, we don't. I specifically remember when I was working at the donut shop. I remember I specifically said, I consciously stepped out while I was having a conversation with my mom, right? And I remember telling myself, I was like, you know, these days that you're always griping about, like, man, this is always the same every single day. Every single day. And we go back to like perspective, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I used to always be like, when is my life going to change? When am I going to get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
But I took myself out. I remember thinking, bro, you are lucky because you got to spend all of these years with your parents, like working with them.
Yeah.
You have to remember at least this moment sitting here across from your mom, both gazing out the window and talking about your future.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it was like, I remember I was like, please, I told myself, like, don't ever forget this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget these moments, because once you move on, like, you know, you don't get to have that anymore. And for me, I'm blessed that I was consciously aware.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like I said, I stepped out to make that a memory.
Yeah.
Just sitting there. And I still remember, I can see it, visually see it. Like, you know, she has a little cup of coffee with a little stir stick. She's got her little tray with the tissue paper and like a donut hole. Like, she would always just eat one or two donut holes.
Mm-hmm.
And she would like nibble on it. She'd always sit there with her leg crossed looking out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd, you know, sit across from her.
Yeah.
And we would just talk about life, you know. But really it was more like her lecturing me. But in a good way, you know. It wasn't anything.
Yeah,
like,
as any parent would.
yeah, you know, because she you know, she works hard. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she's still doing it.
Yeah.
You know. And that was about 15 years ago now.
Wow.
You know, it was like 2000, from like 2000 to like 2009. You know, I remember those memories. Not all of them, but you know what I mean. Like, memories, guys, do not lose them.
What do you think happens to your memories when you go to sleep?
I think that the robot arm takes your hard drive from your brain, and then it stores it somewhere else so it can like recharge. And I think it just stores into like a collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe that's why when you dream, you're just in this pool of other people's memories too,
Mm-hmm.
combined with yours. I don't know. I have dreams where I'm just like, that's not a real memory.
Yeah.
You know, like whose life am I living through? Or
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like, yeah, when you go to sleep, I feel like your hard drive just goes and gets stored somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you wake, the robot arm goes and grabs a new clean hard drive, and then it brings it back, and then it inserts it into your brain, and then you click back on and you wake, and then you're like, okay, it's a new day.
Oh, man.
So how do you know that you're even, you know?
Does that tie into simulation theory?
Maybe. I mean,
Oy.
I mean, we have to think that it's possible.
I've seen so many TikToks on simulation theory.
Yeah.
You want to give their listeners a brief little definition on your take on simulation theory?
My take on simulation theory is that, yeah, we're like, we forget that we're playing this game called life.
Yeah.
And it's so realistic. It's like, you know, I always say this, like, how do you know that when you go to sleep and you dream that that's not actually like the real world?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're like awake, this is actually your sleep state,
Mm-hmm.
while you're actually asleep right now. we're living this out, and this is like the simulation that we're actually in. Like, imagine if like your consciousness, basically your body in the real world goes to sleep. It's like asleep right now in some kind of pod, and you're fueling up, and it's like creating electricity. This is straight up Matrix. Sorry. I'm basically telling you the Matrix. Sorry.
Gotta get that cipher steak.
But you know what I mean? And then after that, your consciousness is like inputted here, and we're like aware, you know? But that's my take on it. Like, I feel like the simulation is just a really in-depth program that we're starting to question. Starting to see the 001011110.
But you know, it's so messed up that they would put us in this kind of a simulation, you know, with all the messed up stuff that's happening in the world. But then you look at like, it's so silly, but you look at like you playing The Sims or all these damn farming games that people are addicted to. I mean, I love Animal Crossing just as much as the next person, and you have these people just doing these routines, you know. Have you ever played The Sims before?
Yes.
You know, and it's like, it's the same shit every day, but you gotta make sure that your characters stay alive and they don't burn the house down, or, you know, they don't forget to eat, you know. And it's like, but we're so addicted to those games.
I know.
You know, there's so many people that are addicted to those games, to farming games. And it's like, why are you playing a game of what your life is basically like? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not going to say I'm not one of those, you know, but it's just, it's a pretty messed up cycle.
We're going into like a more in-depth version of that soon with the whole metaverse. Yeah. Like, that's going to be the new place where people go and hang out. It's like Ready Player One is exactly like you're going to, you know, sync up, and then you're going to jump into a fake room, and you're literally going to be wearing headgear and everything, and you're going to look around and you're going to make friends there. And it's going to become so realistic in the next 10 to 20 to 30 years that it'll be so real that you won't even realize that you're playing a game.
How up and running is the metaverse right now? I don't really know too much about like what its current state is.
I haven't really been keeping up with it, but I know like a lot of the crypto community people are like knee deep in it because of like NFTs, and they're like, oh, when people are, you know, start becoming more versed in the metaverse, it's gonna blow up, and you're gonna be rich because you have all these like character upgrades and skins. And
that really does sound like Ready Player One. That's so crazy.
Yeah, because you remember Ready Player One, you create your own avatar.
Yeah.
You know, you might not even look like the person you created.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that movie with Bruce Willis? I think it was called Surrogates.
No, I don't think I did.
No? Oh, man. So that one literally feels like what we're talking about. Like, people would lay in these pods and then strap in and go into like a made-up place. And there was like some guy that was going around killing other surrogates. But in real life, like, he would find out where they were, and it was pretty dark. But, I mean, it's this concept, right? The concept of, like, you are basically jumping into, like, a fake place. Like, how do you know that when we go to sleep, we're not actually coming out of it and then, like, living a life and being like, man, that was crazy?
You know, I watched a video the other day on apparently, like, Saudi Arabia have you heard about this? Like, they're thinking of, like, building
that wall,
that
the strip that people live in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to like help the environment, you know, our carbon footprints. But like the other side of that is that like you are just now, because apparently it's supposed to have everything you need, you know, and like there's no reason for you to ever need anything on the outside. Do you know what that gave me after I watched that video? That gave me such Logan's Run vibes. Have you ever seen Logan's Run? No? I'm really surprised they haven't remade that film, but short story on it, you know, we have a community that lives in like an underground bubble, I guess you want to call it. And they can only live up to It was based on a book. In the book, I think you could only live up to 21, but in the movie, you actually got until 30. They changed it for whatever reason.
Oh, okay.
But once you got to 30, then you were set to expire, meaning
Wow.
you were given to, I think it's called like the carousel. So basically, you'd be killed.
Yeah.
And it was just to limit the population. You couldn't leave the bubble, and the outside world was just like post-apocalyptic, everything was just like given back to nature. And that's just kind of what that sounded like to me.
That sounds just like it, actually. That's weird.
Like they just controlled everything,
Yeah.
and people just had to put up with it,
That's crazy.
And that's terrifying to think that like they're thinking of implementing. I don't think it would ever happen though.
Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? I remember David used to ask me that, and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, I'm not that smart, bro." This is when I was like,
it's so philosophical.
It was like when I was like 17 or 18. I remember he was like, "Yeah, read this book by Heinrich something," and that was like one of the questions he posited was, does life imitate art, or does art imitate life? It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, you literally told me the same thing, just flip-flopped,
Yeah.
I honestly think if you listeners have not seen Black Mirror, it's pretty crazy, because I feel like we are living through that. A lot of those things that it almost feels like a show about like predicting about our future.
Yeah, they're interesting topics. The first time I got into Black Mirror, that first episode from the first season kind of put me off on not wanting to watch it anymore. But after you started telling me like more and more episodes, and I gave them a chance, and I was like, oh wow, like these are actually interesting theories.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, so I highly recommend it too.
Cool. Well, that was a fun episode. I love talking about like memories. I mean, I feel like that's what we talk about all the time anyways, the good old days, if you think when I was at the shop, I used to just be inundated with customers, older customers that used to just talk about like, their youth and like, what you should do, Sonny, or when I was your age, and it's like, you're always constantly talking about like memories, So to our listeners, don't forget.
Don't forget the good things, I guess.
Do you want to close this out?
Yeah. So go ahead and reach out to us. Let us know your thoughts on memories, on the simulation theory, on the Mandela Effect, if you know any. Let us know about the C3PO leg, because I'm very curious about that. I felt like that was a weird one. But anyway, we're on all socials at enter, ENTER, the number 1, and then 11, ELEVEN. Follow us on YouTube. We have all of our videos up on there from the podcasts. Check us out, subscribe, and yeah.
And hashtag don't forget if you want to remember this.
Never forget.
Thanks for listening.